Well, hello. It's 345 days until Christmas 2020. And this evening we're here to talk about the Clone Wars animated series. It's the second half of the discussion that we started earlier on Reimagining Star Wars channel. And I've got a Magic Maker here with me. And we're going to pick up where we left off, but I'll let a Magic Maker say hi and we'll get started.
Well, hello there. And if you're following us over from Reimagining Star Wars, welcome. I'm a Magic Maker, and tonight we're going to do the second half of season one. And we're picking up. This is the chronological order. So tonight it's staying pretty much with the first season, but there are times when it will jump around. I think the most of the jumping around occurred last week, but now we're going straight into the second half, starting with season one, episode 11. We just finished off episode 10.
Very good. Thank you for the intro there. So, yeah, episode 11, Dooku captured. Obi-Wan and Anakin have made this plan to have Anakin captured as part of their ploy. So Anakin gets captured. Obi-Wan shows up and to rescue him. Just a couple of funny things on here is Anakin loses his lightsaber again. That's something that keeps happening to poor Anakin. And
Yes.
one of the big parts of this episode, and it's one of those that you want to bookmark if you want to get caught up on some of the characters, is Hondo Ohnaka is introduced in this episode. So
Yes.
Hondo is, of course, carried over now in the Galaxy's Edge at the theme parks. People are starting to learn about who Hondo is, and this is the episode where he's first introduced. So for folks that want to kind of get caught up, here's a good place to start. Obi-Wan and Anakin have to fight a Gundark. They're rescued by Ahsoka and some of the clones, and then Dooku is taken to Florum, and that's where Hondo has captured Dooku. And so Obi-Wan and Anakin are sent to confirm to Palpatine that they do have that Hondo does have Dooku. And once he confirms, then they send Jar Jar to pay the ransom. And Hondo, of course, he's a pirate. He's got a whole kind of village of pirates, if you will, a base of pirates, Pirate Cove, and they want spice. They want paid in spice, which is kind of illegal. It's drug trafficking. So
it's the equivalent of opium in
it is. So
opium.
that's the gist of the show. Is Dooku is captured, but the pirates take him, and Obi-Wan and Anakin show up to confirm to Palpatine that, yep, this pirate does actually have Dooku. And they decide to pay, the Senate is going to pay the ransom to get Dooku so they can hold him trial. So you got a duplicitous Palpatine there, both ransoming for the Senate, or if you wanted to look at it as him ransoming as his understudy. So either way, it works out for Palps.
Right. I think the key factor on this, one of the biggest things I picked out was, of course, the messing with the Gundarks, right?
Yep.
And how that ties into Revenge of the Sith, as ever since I rescued you from those Gundarks.
Yeah, there's that line. That's good. I forgot about that. Yeah.
So now we have that tied to an actual incident now.
We do. And again, just here's where we get Hondo. And Hondo is really a bad guy, right? At this point, Hondo is a pirate. He's on no side. And we find that out in the next episode, the Gungan General. Wait a minute, is that this one or is it later? Yeah, it's this one.
This one.
Yeah, so the Gungan General. So they've got Obi-Wan and Anakin there, and as I just mentioned, Hondo's on neither side. They took Dooku captive to get a ransom, and they said, "Well, shoot, we get ransom from the Senate for Dooku, how much ransom would they give for a Jedi? And so he ends up drugging Anakin and Obi-Wan and takes them hostage as well. And the plan is to get the reward for Dooku and then announce that they want to get the reward for these Jedi and to get a
Right.
3-for-1 kind of deal.
Exactly. This is an example of the monkey putting his fist in the jar and then being able to pull it out with the nuts in his hand.
That's a good. Yeah, monkey trap, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So Dooku manages to escape. He kills a couple of pirates, uses the Force, chokes one of them to death, has one of them shoot the other one before he does it, and then he escapes. And the interesting part at the end is that Obi-Wan and Anakin's kind of wanting to hold uh, Hondo's feet to the fire, hold him accountable for what he had done,
Right.
taking him hostage. And Obi-Wan says, "Our fight's not with you. You're a pirate. We know all about you. That's not our issues with the guy that got away. So no hard feelings. See ya."
Yep. And that was one of the cool is that Jar Jar again is the comic relief, but he's actually kind of smart because he figures out that when those acid geysers work. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's a good point. Jar Jar comes in handy a couple of times in this episode. One is just thinking of he notices that those geysers, the local animals have a bit of a sensation when they're going to go off, and they run, and so they know they can hide in this geyser until the animals run. That was really good. And then of course they use Jar Jar as in his clumsiness to kind of knock out the equipment there.
Take him, he's a plague.
Yes. Yeah. So Jar Jar does come in handy. And that's in Jedi Crash, the third part of this episode. So again, these three kind of go together. The power gets. No, I'm jumping ahead. No,
Those
that
two
was
go together.
yeah. Those two just go together. Jar Jar does kind of knock off the power there with the pirates, and that's how everybody's able to escape. And then we have that issue. So. Yeah, so Jar Jar's clumsiness comes in handy. It was very reminiscent of the Phantom Menace when his clumsiness took out those tanks. It was
Yep.
very, very
No,
similar.
he is just a lucky guy. Luck follows him. I mean, just everything works out in his favor. Luck. That was the same thing. The Bombad Jedi was the same way.
Yep, yeah,
So that's the MO for Jar Jar.
exactly. Moving on, the next episode, episode 13, Jedi Crash. The Separatists are beating the Republic bad, right? The Separatists are winning in the Outer Rim. They introduced super droids in here, which I thought was interesting. They can fly. Just to borrow a phrase from the Rise of Skywalker, they can fly now.
Fly now?
Yeah, they can fly now. The super droids, and they're quite the enemy. So I don't know that we see super droids a lot. This is the first time I've ever seen them, and I don't know that they come in later. Sort of a handy weapon for a moment, and then that's that.
I think the main thing is that the bad decision to they did the hasty hyperdrive that takes them flying into the star.
Yeah, so there's another example of a hyperdrive being activated, and it's plotted towards a star. And so again, our hyperdrive experts here, a magic maker. Any issues with that hyperdrive driving them into that star? Would it have taken them out of hyperspace before they got there? The gravity well of the star? How's that work?
I would think that that they would drop out before. But that said, clearly Han Solo makes a big case of it. So maybe there isn't a failsafe maybe the failsafe is if you can sense it prior. Because if you're moving at 50,000 times the speed of light, I don't know how quickly you can sense a gravity well.
Yeah.
Because in real physics, gravity is also limited to the speed of light. So, if you're moving at 50,000 times the speed of light, you're not going to sense it.
Right.
Sensors are going to sense it.
Right.
And And so it's I think that what you have is a situation where if you don't make your right calculations, you can fly into a supernova. And
Right.
real quick, wouldn't it, there, buddy?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it seems that the gravity wells don't necessarily mean you'll get pulled out of hyperspace in time to react, and your speed is still going to be like, this is where it starts to get a little precarious because speeds tended to carry over. When they came out of hyperdrive, they were pulled into that star, and they had to hurry to get the power back on so they could get out of the gravity.
Right. I think that's mainly the thing is that when they come in out of hyper, like they probably would fall out of hyperspace, before they flew into the star itself. But what would probably happen is they would be so close to the star they couldn't escape the gravity well of the star.
Yeah.
So they would be like within the corona of the star or something like that. And so it just vaporized them.
Yeah, it's again. I think hyperspace travel in Star Wars isn't as sci-fi as people want it to be. It's more fantasy, and
Right. It's magic travel.
it's magic travel. Exactly.
It's as fast as they need it to be for the story.
That's
as slow as they need it to be.
That's exactly right. Thor Skywalker puts it that way, right? Hyperspace travel is the speed of the story plot, right?
Right.
And when that story is done, we come out of hyperspace. That's how it works.
Right. It does kind of take you out of the story when they do that, and sometimes.
Well, to be honest, that's my issue with this new uh, Star Trek series,
Right.
Discovery. That new space travel device they have that spins and they just pop to wherever they need to be is not, that takes me out, right? So you got to be careful when you break the rules so much and for at a whim, that it doesn't just become such a convenience that it's like, well, okay.
Right. Well, it removes tension.
Yeah. Yeah.
So whenever you can do stuff like that, it removes tension, and you need these tension. Now I get what they're trying to do here is they're trying to provide tension with it,
Mm-hmm.
but then it becomes a method by which, so then continuity comes into play, consistency comes into play.
Yeah. And again, is it just going really fast, or is
Right.
it being in a different dimension?
Right. And so you got to be concerned about it. So I mean, knowing whether you don't have to go into the rules of how it works per se, but this is what's depth of a story, and we kind of go into that. It's one of the things I'll probably, if I haven't already started doing, as far as in my how to write fan fiction kind of things. It's important that when you write a story, that you're writing more than just the story. So that there's depth.
There's world building, right?
Story behind the story.
Yeah, world building is important.
Yes, it's very important because it gives you guidelines for how people act, and that is what is implied by their the actions they take. So you don't say they're doing this because of this; they just do it. But that implication is of them being forced to do a certain action means that there is a world that's guiding that action.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, that means a character can do whatever they want to when the plot says they can do it, and you end up with these crazy actions that don't always line up.
Well, and that's what when you drop a viewer out of the story, that's when real world rules start to creep in and break everything down.
Right. So I mean, and if you haven't established another rule, then the assumption will always be that it's real world.
Yeah.
Because you can't separate it really in your mind. So you have to establish in the conditions that there's a world behind it. But if you simply assume that it's real world conditions as you write the conditions for and then all of a sudden break it, that's when people come out of the story.
Yeah.
Because your rules have to stay consistent.
Yeah. And hyperspace is one in Star Wars. It's just not.
Right.
It's just not.
And it's a shame.
And the Holdo,
it's a plot convenience.
Yeah, the Holdo maneuver kind of highlighted that, but it wasn't the first time it was broken.
Well, Well, obviously not.
Yeah.
Obviously.
So this they crash on this planet as they pull out of the power of that sun. The ship is damaged. They don't have enough maneuverability or control of the ship to be able to avoid crashing into this planet. And they crash into the planet, and it's inhabited by some very large predator type animals that give them some issues, but
Right.
also by an intelligent species of like um, monkey type beings, right?
Right. Like
Um,
lemurs.
yeah, they're like lemurs. Yeah, and they have a very strict code of nonviolence.
Right.
They refused, like even with those very large predator animals, they refuse to kill the animal that's attacking them. They subdue it, and then they let
Right.
it go.
Yep,
Um,
and that leads us right into Defenders of the Peace too. And
it does.
because Anakin was injured and needed help,
Right. They send a
and
healer
so
to help Anakin, but
right,
that's all. They do have that. They say if we're asked to help somebody, we have to help. That's part of our code, but they can't
right,
fight. Yeah, and
they
that
can't
leads
fight.
into
One of the
Defenders
things
of the
that struck
Peace.
me as odd though is because the enemy was droids, and I don't get why they're not willing to defend themselves against
I
droids.
agreed with you 100%. In Defenders of the Peace, the villagers get upset because they think the Jedi or that these visitors brought the Separatists to their planet, and that's not true at all. The Separatists just happened upon it at the same time, and through that, this guy called Lerman. No, they are called Lerman. That's the species. These lemur type people are called, or their species called Lerman. They said they would rather die than to kill. To your point, what's a droid, right?
Right, and a droid is not clearly not alive.
Right. It's such a strict code of nonviolence that it even applies to non-living things.
Right. One of the things that also got me though is that so I mean it gave you basically three choices. This is the kind of thing that so you can fight, all right, with a code to intent. So our four choices. You can fight with no code, meaning that you attack, you take what you want, and you can be evil, and or you can just be self-centered. You can be you can defend and attack with a code with the intent to secure liberty and secure the ability of people to make self determination, and then you can choose not to fight but not to leave, and then the course of action will be that you die where you stand or you're enslaved,
Right.
or you can choose not to fight and you can run,
Yeah.
and that choice was never explored.
No.
And
No.
and so it seems to me if you're not willing to fight and you won't leave, then your only choice is enslavement or death.
Right. And that seemed to be the Lerman chieftain's position, right? I'm going to stay here. You'll either enslave me or kill me, and whatever you do is fine by me. That's
Right.
like, and his village wasn't so keen on that idea.
Right. And he said, "This is how we survived for many generations." And I was like, "Well, how did you survive like that for many generations?"
Well, you're fixing not to survive another one, right?
Right. Well, but he said, "It's why we came here to
Yeah.
avoid your conflict." So it's
Yeah.
clear they ran away.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And so I don't. To me, that was a break in that person's character. It did not make sense.
Well, yeah. And Lock Durd is the separatist leader. He has this weapon that's supposed to kill all biological, burn it up. You know,
Yeah, the defoliator. I was like, okay.
yeah, the defoliator that also is,
Being defoliated.
yeah, that also would evidently evaporate or burn up a living being. And they decide to test it on the villagers. So that first they tested on just the foliage, like defoliator. They tested on the foliage and the droid. It works just as it's supposed to. Now they're saying, okay, now we got to see what happens if there's a creature in there. So rather than using one of the large predator animals and just putting it in the middle like they did with the droids, he said, well, I came here specifically because we've got this primate species on here, these lurmen, and we can just wipe them out, and that'll be a good test. Um, it's just,
Yeah. It's just one of those things where, hey, let's make the bad guys really bad because we've already decided we kind of like the other people.
yeah,
And the Jedi are good, and they're trying to convince them that they should fight for their freedom. And that tends out to be the decision of the village, right? That they
right.
go against the tradition to fight, to
Yep.
defend themselves for
Yep.
their freedom.
Yeah, and
And so,
the chieftain never seems to be truly satisfied with it, but he has to accept
he
it in
was
the end.
satisfied with death.
Yeah, he was gonna. Yeah, he was gonna die, and even after they defended themselves and they lived and everybody was leaving, he was still a bit like, well, okay, I've got to accept that this is what happened, but it wasn't.
At what price?
Yeah, yeah, that's what he says, right? So he's still not really on board with the whole thing, but it's it is what it is.
Yeah. And so I think that's a good place to move on to the
Yep.
next part because
So
that was a lesson of that.
yep. So they go to a snow-covered planet now. This isn't the snow-covered planet that we all know.
It's not Hoth.
It's not Hoth. It's
Automondia or something like that.
Ordo Plutonia.
What's that?
Ordo Plutonia.
Ordo Plutonia.
Plutonia.
And it's the Pantorans that are in control of it.
Yeah, and this is one of the moons of Pantora, right? Ordo Plutonia is one of the moons of Plutonia, I think. Orto meaning moon of, right?
Right.
So Anakin, Obi-Wan, C-3PO, R2-D2, Rex, clones, dignitaries, like everybody's there, and they come in and they find clone helmets on pikes, which I noted because we see that in the Mandalorian.
Right.
Not clones, but stormtroopers helmets on pikes, and then they quickly discover that the same thing happened to a droid base. There's a bunch of droid heads on pikes,
Right.
and Obi-Wan and Anakin want to make peaceful contact with the local. They're called the Talz, Talz. Right. But the chairman of those Pantorans, yeah, he's a war hawk. He's like, nope, we got to kill them all, and he sees them as a subspecies, that they're not intelligent yet. C-3PO is able to have conversation with them, and obviously they're a military force to be reckoned with. They've completely destroyed a rebel base and a droid base.
Right.
And
they tamed other beasts. They make tools.
Yeah.
Weapons.
And this chairman is just a complete idiot.
Again, it's. I think the idea is that it's one of those things that they're trying to show that there are kind of corrupt people on both sides.
Yep.
And so like there's people that are just all out for control and power.
Yeah.
And that's all they're about,
Yeah.
And they, I mean, they don't go into the depths of why. I mean, to me, what's one of those things is where the chairman dies because and he says, "You must avenge me." I mean, it's like
no,
like bad guys don't have reasons. That's what it seems like.
Right.
It's like they're selfish without a reason.
Yeah.
I don't need this moon, but it's going to be mine because I say it's mine. It's always been mine.
Well, looking down on other species, right? We know Star Wars has a problem with human prominence, right?
Right.
In Palpatine, it's carried on like in further books and novels where you get the more explicitly said Palpatine sees humans as a higher class of being,
Right.
but that pervades everything, right?
No, it does. Slavery, right?
It really does. And it came up earlier today when I was talking about Padme accepting when Anakin killed all of the Sand people, right?
Right.
He wipes them out.
Bad.
Yeah. Oh, they're just Sand people.
I'm just saying.
Wait a second. It'll be all right, honey. It's okay. Calm down.
But if those had been puppies, end of the relationship.
or God help you, don't punch a baby Yoda in the head.
I know.
Don't do that.
If they're cute. Can't happen.
Can't do it.
If they're ugly, it's okay.
Yeah. Behead them all. The women and the children too.
Women and the children too.
Yeah. So yeah, there is a problem with species kind of, and this chairman kind of brings it out, right? He's not
Right,
human. He's humanoid, but he's not human.
right.
And he sees these talls.
Beast is Tao is lesser and
Yeah,
not somebody who should be given. Basically, it's not reason for them to give up control of the Odo Plutonian.
right. And so the senator is a more reasonable person. She sees the value of the towels, and she, at the end, she establishes peace with them as a free and equal people. She brings them
Right.
up on.
Yeah, one of the things I didn't look into because I know that Lucas' daughter wrote a lot of the episodes. I didn't look to see if that was one of hers.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
know. It does. It's
so
very reminiscent again of the Phantom Menace when uh, Padme Amidala tells the Gungans, "Hey, you're equal with us."
right.
Right.
No, to me it was like actually one of the things I noted was that the senator was a child,
Yeah.
And she's somehow more wise than the chairman.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a purposeful story decision.
Yeah.
That children are more innocent and therefore more wise than the corrupt thing. And I guess in realism, it doesn't make much sense.
Well, it's a theme in it is
But
a theme in Star Wars where younger generations overturn the mistakes of the
right,
previous.
but the younger, more innocent in the if you go back to, and I've done this about the Force is nature's magic. So return to the innocent time is the time before the corruption, and the dark side is the corruption. So um, it mimics that aspect of things, so that you have nature versus mechanism,
Yeah.
and so this idea that the innocent is the period of time when we were wise, when we were willing to make decisions on face value, and we weren't duplicitous with one another. I think that's why they keep showing it is the theme, even though it's oversimplified. And I think it's because it was intended for kids, and that's why I can be very um, critical of
Forgiving.
it
Yeah.
in the sense that I think they could have written it without some of anything, but the
Yeah.
key of what they're trying to do is show that romantic type of theme throughout. And actually, I mean, if you're looking at it from that standpoint, it's kind of beautiful, actually.
Yeah, and well, and it is common where look at like Harry Potter, the these sixth graders are smarter than all the adults and everything
Right.
like that. So
No,
it's
it's not uncommon.
yeah, it's not uncommon at all.
Right.
The next episode, Blue Shadow Virus,
Yep.
is we're back on Naboo, and Amidala and Jar Jar are returning to investigate these rumors, and there's a secret lab being run by Nuvo Vindi.
Yep.
Dr. Nuvo Vindi. He is looking at the virus as a living organism, and that he is creating life or restoring life to an extinct um species, if you will.
Yeah.
But he's not just that innocent, right?
Right.
He understands that then the goal of that is to weaponize it and use it against and destroy life. So
He's actually quite excited about that.
yeah, it's a very mixed up mindset that he's restoring life to destroy life. It's a bit of internal logical inconsistency with that character.
Yep.
We here and earlier we had Vega mentioned about the jumping around. Here we get lots of jumping around.
Yes, we do.
Obi-Wan and Anakin they force jump from planes, and then they sort of skydive into the facility just using the Force. Um,
Yeah,
so
but they did that too before.
yeah, so
So we saw them do that earlier in the.
hashtag Mace Windu lives. That's all I got to say.
Yeah.
So ultimately, Anakin rescues Padme and Jar Jar. Dr. Vindi escapes, and then Anakin and a Gungan defeat Vindi. There's, but
Yeah,
through
there's that new Gungan, the girl.
yeah,
She's just like Jar Jar, except she's a girl.
right. And she's not as clumsy right? She's actually got some grace to her, um, which is much better than Jar Jar. But yeah, the Gungan, she's she helps them, and then but as a result of all of that, some of the gas within that facility itself escapes, and uh, some of the clones are contaminated as well as
Right.
Ahsoka, and um, through the course of trying to keep the battle droids from opening the place up, Padme's biosuit's compromised. She's exposed to the virus. So you've got all these people, lead characters, Ahsoka, the clones, Rex is in there, in Padme, who are poisoned with the Blue Shadow virus.
Yep. Yep.
And Anakin and Obi-Wan have to go to this planet that's inside of um, the Trade Federation or the separatist territories to get a very rare plant that is an antidote.
Right. You have to get the root of that plant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a little aside before we get into this.
Yeah.
Nouveau Vindi. So so the Urban Dictionary for Vindi is the best man or best person the world has ever met. It also is an Italian word for to sell. That's where we get vendor from. Right?
Oh, okay.
And but nouveau would mean new.
Yeah.
Right. So so you can have a new vendor or a new person that's the best they've ever met. So this person is clearly trying to make life, so he thinks that he thinks he's the new best person that's ever been.
I see.
Right?
Yeah.
And he clearly depicts that mentality. He thinks he's smarter than
that arrogance.
He's so a little side of how names can have meaning in Star Wars.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good, and it's very obvious. Like some of the names in here that throughout Star Wars are dead giveables, and
Right.
and that's fine. I don't have any problem with it at all. But this is a good example, and thanks for looking that Vindi up. I didn't know what Vindi meant, so that's helpful. But so as a result, they go to this planet, and this planet they go to. Let's see if I took down that note. I did not. They go to that planet, and they meet this kid called Jabbo Hood, and Jabbo Hood's a kid who's programmed a bunch of droids, battle droids, and the like. And his voice, if you listen to audiobooks, his voice is just like the kid that we get from the Aftermath series. And he's got a battle droid robot called Bones. And he reprograms Bones to be an aide. And here we get Jabbo Hood that's very much just like that kid. And it reminded me of it. We see that parallel. And I won't go too far into that. If you haven't read Resistance, it does tie into the Rise of Skywalker. There's a character that kid that reprograms the robots is in the Rise of Skywalker. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. So I won't give away what happens. No spoiler. If you don't know him, get to know him, and then you can experience the scene just like the rest of us. So I'm trying not to give it away. There's a thing that happens, and he's definitely in it, and there's a thing that happens. It's a pivotal moment of the movie. So it's featured. So Jabbo Hood's the kid. He's reprogrammed these droids, but the planet has a defensive weapon named Droll, and that defensive weapon won't let anything out of its atmosphere.
Right.
If anything tries to escape, it shoots them down. And the planet is surrounded by debris, dead people floating in space. You see that in one of the scenes. There's a dead guy floating there. There's ships everywhere. So when you talk about a cartoon being for kids, dead guys floating in space isn't exactly child friendly. But
What are you talking about? My 5-year-old loves that. Where are all the dead bodies, Daddy?
yeah, yeah. Well, there you go. Uh, so
He really doesn't say that. I'm not a
no,
sadistic father.
no, but I wouldn't put it past Vega saying something funny about it. But
Yes, she would. She has not seen that episode yet,
she's
though.
super smart. But
We're just rocking through this so fast that she hasn't
yeah.
had a chance to see it.
So they're on that planet. They don't have any trouble there because the droids have all been reprogrammed, but they can't get off the planet because of this defensive mechanism.
Right.
Anakin and Obi-Wan come up with a way. They disarm it. They get back in the nick of time, and they save it. They save the day. Everybody lives.
Yeah, I thought one of the coolest things was actually the plants that were down there.
Yeah.
And, I really liked how, man, they were vicious. I was like, wow, these things are awesome.
yeah. Then we end the discussion tonight with another three-parter, and it's around Ryloth. We get
now we finally come back to Ryloth. So it's kind of the follow on from what was going on with we're talking about ambush and supply lines.
Yep.
Now we finally circled back to Ryloth because the whole point of the Toydarians was so that we could reach Ryloth, right?
Which is interesting because that's season 3, episode 3. This is again why watching the Clone Wars in chronological order makes so much more sense than watching a release order.
Right.
Because season 3, episode 3 is all the way at the very beginning, before anything else. And now this is the show after that, but it's season 1, episode 19, 20, and 21. We have Storm over Ryloth, Innocence of Ryloth, and Liberty on Ryloth.
Right.
3 phases of freeing the people of Ryloth from the separatists.
Right.
Wat Tambor, the Techno Union, shows up here. He's again part of Attack of the Clones. He's featured in that movie.
Yes, he is.
So Wat Tambor is here. Ahsoka is sent out on her first command, and I mentioned this in your stream. Ahsoka is severely beaten. Her troops are wiped out, and
Right.
she's one of the few survivors. And she takes that loss extremely hard. It's the same lesson that Poe needs to be taught in The Last Jedi, where he's like, yeah, we won, but Leia has to say, dude, everybody died, right? Like, you killed so many people.
You won, but at what cost?
Right. And Poe doesn't have that same sort of gravitas, right? Like, oh my goodness, this was terrible. Ahsoka is on the other end of that. She reacts tremendously that this is a huge loss, much more like Anakin did when he lost his troops and he took it hard. Ahsoka takes it harder, and Anakin, having gone through it, and it was set up before. This is good storytelling. Again, we get an example of a character arc that's carried through the series that makes the character so much better.
Right.
Anakin has gone through this, and now he's got a Padawan who's going through it, and he's able to teach her because he's been there. He associates with it. He understands what she's going through, and teaches her this lesson. So he puts her in charge of the Defender, and he goes out, and the ship is falling apart, and he essentially crashes it into the base, the blockade shield generator ship there, just like he did in The Phantom Menace, destroys it. Here he crashes this giant ship into it and destroys it. He ejects on an escape pod, but through this, Ahsoka comes up with a plan to use the Resolute to support Anakin, and it's successful. So the first part of the show, she loses her troops, and she takes it devastated. Right. Anakin puts her in a place to kind of pick herself back up and apply her knowledge and skills and be successful, and that puts her back on her feet.
The back's on her feet.
Yeah.
And then, and so she's gone through the arc of loss, recovery, and success.
Exactly, and you see character development in Anakin and Ahsoka here, right? And this helped me so much with the prequels, seeing Anakin's character develop, and here his character develop tremendously through what we talked about in your stream and here, and Ahsoka as well. This is why so many people love Ahsoka so much.
No, absolutely.
Her character is one of the best in the whole franchise, and wow, this is a great episode.
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, it's actually this Ryloth episode was a great way to end the season. Basically, that's what this was, and it was a really good arc overall.
Yeah.
And it's for me I enjoyed the whole part, and I actually the little girl that we get, Nera.
Yep.
We see her actually in some books later, so she's carried through in the story as well.
Yeah.
And so I, for one, enjoy this, and I love it when characters are tied into the story later on. And we have the Syndulas that we begin to get introduced to as well, and so through the course of this, and so to me, this is one of these one of these arcs that the remnants of pepper the entire story all the way through the future.
Yeah. And if you just wanted to watch this arc, again, go back to season 3, episode 3, then season 1, episode 19, 20, and 21. So
Yep.
they've at the first part, they break the blockade. The second part, they go to the landing armies, and they've got to overpower the defenses, these great big cannons. And then that part is where they meet this little girl, a couple of the clones, and they talk to her, and then they feed her, and she helps them get through the town.
Right.
And at the end, we learn that she keeps calling him Nera. She says Nera, 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 and it means brother.
Right.
So again, the humanization of these clones, they mean something, right? They're to her, they're her brothers, right? Even though they're not the same species.
Right.
And they're clones. They're her brothers. It was very touching. It's a very good episode.
Right.
The last one is Liberty on Ryloth, and Mace Windu is battling to liberate the capital city. And here I put down a note because we have an interesting use case for Walker type vehicles versus hover type vehicles.
Right.
Star Wars will make you crazy that way. Like the very first vehicle that we kind of see in Star Wars is Luke's speeder.
Right.
It's a hover vehicle. Then we follow up by these great big, the AT-ATs and ATSTs. Yeah, that are Walker types.
Right.
And in this episode itself, we see tanks that are hover versus Walker type kind of tanks.
Right.
It just makes no sense, right? Like,
Right.
why do you have walkers when you could hover? Why do you, and people complain about Rise of Skywalker having tracked vehicles?
Right.
Well, throw it in the mix because we've got all these others too. It's Star Wars. I mean,
it is as simple as this. I understand why you would have walkers when, say, the terrain is very undulating or it's very overgrown and they can push through it.
Yeah.
And so if we go back to 101, where with ambush, right? There was a clear case where the tank wouldn't push through, but they'd had a big walker. The walker would just step around all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that'd be an example of a walker versus that. But there's clearly terrain that's meant for the tanks and clearly terrain that's meant for. So that's even true with modern tanks, or in tanks World War II. Just compare this to World War II and World War I technology.
Yeah.
And so in World War II, you could have a fight with tanks in the forest. It was not ideal. So the ideal place to have your tank battle was on the plains.
Yeah.
And so you wanted open ground and that's where your tank battle would occur. And I would say that is where you would put your tanks here, and then for your undulating terrain where you have rough terrain. Uh, we saw the episode where remember the walker was walking up the
Cliff.
cliff, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of terrain I think the walkers are intended to do.
Yeah.
Now the AT-ATs don't seem to make sense on that in that case because they're so tall and their center of gravity is so high in comparison.
Now,
But
I did like the one person.
Definitely more intimidating.
I like the one person ATSTs in this episode.
Yes, the like little salt attack chicken walkers.
They're super cool. I'm like, where did those go? I want one of those.
I know.
Dang.
They are open top though, so maybe that's why they got rid of them.
Still, dude. I mean, that's a good way to transport around.
I know.
They're
fast.
I know.
They're so fast. They're so much faster than the ATSTs.
I know.
Like, what happened? The technology got worse.
Yeah, keep using those things. I want one. Yeah. I don't know why we don't see more of them, but we do see blurgs again. Another reference to the Mandalorian. Blurgs are used. They even mention them as being blurgs in this episode.
Yep. So they're carried through, and so that means again that's connectivity that I like to see in Star Wars.
Yep.
I think not to go into Mandalorian, but the Mandalorian shows that the attention to detail that is occurring by pulling stuff all the way back into the Ryloth arc.
Well, we're seeing so many things of why the Mandalorian is so popular. And why the sequel trilogy and others are, even the prequel trilogy, are not, right?
So, I mean, so it's not fan service to keep a thread through the media that you keep. It is a reward to the fan who has followed it because he understands.
It's world building. As we talked about that earlier, right?
It makes sense to them.
It makes sense. We've got heads on pikes, right? Helmets on pikes. We've seen that before. You've got blurs, seen those before. You know, so many references that are part of the world, right? Like this not world is
all interconnected.
Yeah, not world is in a planet,
the important part.
But the universe.
You understand that there's a world out there that this is it's a real place.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So
we see Mace Windu in this last episode, and you know
he meets up with these freedom fighters, and Cham Syndulla. Cham Syndulla is got a bad reputation for being a bit of a rebel and troublemaker, but he's got a powerful force. Right, when Mace first comes across him, Syndulla's forces overtake them easily. They completely obliterated Resistance outfit, and then Mace and his crew come over the dune, and boom! Instantly, they're kind of surrounded. And Mace understands the value of having another. Oh shoot! What's the species? Twi'lek. Twi'lek. He understands the need to have another Twi'lek involved in freeing these people, so that they can stand up on their own afterwards and have pride in themselves. And the Jedi aren't given credit for this. So I do like that Mace leverages Cham Syndulla, and basically credit can go to him, and gets agreement that Cham's not going to just overtake things, but he'll participate with the democratic process.
Right. So. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, Cham is, of course, that carries all the way through into Rebels. That's Hera Syndulla's father.
Yep. So again, it's a part where the Clone Wars, to me, redeemed a lot of the prequels. I've already mentioned the character building, the world building, things that are going on here are good. It's not to say that it's perfect. We've talked a lot about the mistakes and the issues that just make you nuts. But at the same time, it does a lot to help develop characters in the world that we all love in Star Wars.
I think that this is the end of season 1, and this was the beginning to where we got to see what was coming ahead. Yeah. So we're gonna get through season 1 and 2, and everybody will say that these are the 2 slow seasons. and there is true. But this was a really good arc, and if you do that with 303, 101, and this, and run these, are really those five go together. And I'm really not sure why they didn't put them together in that sense.
Yeah. So just
But,
go ahead.
but yeah, so I just those to me are the playing out of just where the story is going and letting you know the importance of setting up the different worlds.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it has me hopeful for what we might get in the future, to reconcile the sequels for so many people. What the Clone Wars did for me with the prequels, I'm hoping that the people who were disappointed and hurt with the sequels will get something that helps them in the same way.
Well, I mean, if Mike Zero is to be believed,
Awesome.
the order has gone out to retcon and fix the problems with the sequel trilogy, and so I'm expecting to see this play out and see a series.
The guy can't be wrong all the time, right? A blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then.
Right. I think they recognize that whether you like them or not, I think Disney recognizes that they've mishandled where they should have gone with the story.
Well, the fandom, for sure, right?
Fandom. They mishandled the fandom. They've created conflict where there didn't need to be any. I mean, there was such hope at the beginning of this whole thing, but you know what? You make mistakes, and so I think Kathleen Kennedy made some mistakes in the course of this. I don't think she fully understood her fandom, and I don't think she understood her source material. And she tried to put too much of her desires and let, instead of playing it in a direction that and trusting people like Filoni to kind of carry it through. She trusted, it's not always bad to trust your instincts, but I think she trusted her movie making instincts over her Star Wars storytelling instincts. So I think we ended up with some what would be considered good movies, but not necessarily good Star Wars stories for the entire fandom.
Well, I think it's clear that Disney pushed the accelerator faster than Lucasfilm was built to move.
Right.
If that makes sense, right?
No, absolutely. At the same time, she was new at running it. That's my point.
Yeah.
And I think, I get that you liked it, and I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't like it.
No.
What I'm trying to say is that, what I'm trying to say in the whole thing is that they pushed it, and she did not, when I say she didn't understand it, she didn't understand the entirety of the fandom.
Yes.
So the direction that she took it was something that would resonate probably with her and what she thought would be good movies, as versus what would resonate with the majority of the fandom, and in particular, I always talk about that 20%,
Yeah.
And understanding where that is and resonating with that, and then expanding from there and telling your story along those lines.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is Disney wanted movies now. They didn't want them 10 years from now. They wanted them now. And Lucasfilm wasn't built for it. And so they didn't put in the due diligence up front and have the complete story arc kind of outlined. And they just ran at it without proper understanding, without proper due diligence, without proper background. They just ran at it.
And one of the things you got to do before you ever start making stuff is you got to flesh out your story.
Yeah.
And like I said, you have to have a story behind the story.
I think they basically had a string. They said, "Here's where we want. They're starting. Here's where we're going to end. Now build a story." And then they let that flesh itself out. However,
no, I think you're absolutely right. I think the reason why the OT came out so well is that Lucas had written this Journal of the Wills, right? And there was so much out there. Like, he had a ton to pull from.
Who he also wasn't accountable to any previous material. Right?
Bingo.
So
I was about to say that too. So the only accountable material he was with the previous episode.
So, I mean, he retconned Vader being Luke's father. He wasn't supposed to be, but he made it. He retconned Leia being Luke's sister. She wasn't supposed to be, but
That's right.
we'll make it. So all those makeout sessions that Luke and Leia had before, oh, that's okay. We just,
They
now
didn't
they're
know.
now they're brother
That's
and
okay
sister.
because they didn't know.
I saw a video this week where the guy was kind of lamenting about it, and there's at the end when Luke tells Leia that they're brother and sister, she goes, I've always known. Really, you always knew. Back when you were lip locked with him, you knew then. And like, well, no, I don't think you did. So anyway, just to wrap it up tonight,
Right.
we're coming up on an hour. Next week, we're going into season 2, the bulk of next week, season 2. If you look for the outline, you can find the chronological order. Starts with 2-1, and then episode 2-3, then jump to 17-18-19, and then back to 4-5-6-7-8. We'll do that on a Magic Makers stream on Reimagining Star Wars. And then we'll pick back up here again, and we'll pick up from season 2, episode 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, then jump forward to 20, 21, and 22. So that's our schedule for next week. If you didn't catch that, look it up.
We'll put those episodes down. We'll put a link to those to the chronological order in both of our descriptions, so you'll be able to find it here and you'll be able to find it over there.
Yeah.
And something we might do, and we'll have a conversation about that, is maybe break this up a little bit in a way, and so it may not all be live next week if we can figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
That way you're not trying to watch 2 hours of two guys talking and interrupting. And on my side, have been interrupted by little Ren, who doesn't necessarily understand that this is live.
Yeah. So, Certain Nerd a lot, thank you for being on the stream tonight. It's great to see you here, and we look forward to seeing this grow and engaging folks with discussion on both Discord and here. So, if you haven't yet, like the stream, subscribe, and get notifications. Look for Reimagining Star Wars. I put his link in the description as well. Be sure to like, subscribe, get notifications there. And until next week, I'll just close out as I do all the time and say, may the Force be with you. And Merry Christmas, everybody. Good night.
Right.